Like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel and Administration Committee for Thursday, November 14th, 2024. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Alderman Aldridge,
Present.
President Green.
Present.
For present, you have quorum.
Quorum being present, I will entertain a motion on the approval of the minutes from Thursday, October 24th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
President Green. 4 aye votes.
With that, for today, we have no board bills or resolutions to review, but we do need to continue our committee discussions around the grievance process, performance improvement plans, and the performance review form. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Director Ingracia to provide us an update on the grievance process from our last meeting.
Thank you so much, Madam President and members of the committee. The discussion we need to have today is getting information from the assistant clerk on employee feedback for the grievance and complaint process and the performance improvement plan process. And then I'm hoping the committee had an opportunity to review the spreadsheet. I've been able to send it a couple of times, sent one earlier this week as a reminder, but just to kind of recap, we're holding on the performance review form. It's the only pieces we need to complete it are being able to add the grievance and performance improvement plan processes. So the grievance process, you all were just going to take a look at what I had created in terms of timing and the process in different ways that staff are able to address any concerns they have. This is the formalized process after it's attempted to be handled, if appropriate, internally or between employee. And then the performance improvement process plan is what will happen if an employee receives a really low score on the performance review form, or if an incident occurs throughout the year that would justify needing to have something expressly written down to make sure both the employee and supervisor understand what expectations are from the assistant committee.
Right. Assistant Clerk Rogers, was there any feedback that you were able to get from staff regarding the employee review process or the grievance process?
Good morning, President Green and members of the Personnel Committee. We did send an email out on October the 28th to the legislative assistants and also the Board of Aldermen staff, asking for their input and their feedback on the grievance process. And we got and I sent a reminder, and I also went to the ones that were actually here and went to them and asked them if they have any input, any feedback that they want to give. We did not get as many as I expected. However, we did get one response, and it's shared with you all in a drive. And what the person said, she basically, and if it's okay with you to share this.
Yes.
Okay. So the person emailed me, and I'll just highlight one thing that was said. She said basically that the process with the grievance review is with the alderpersons, and it'll possibly be a conflict of interest. She did like the idea of an unelected committee reviewing grievance process, and it can be comprised of the personnel committee, a person from the personnel committee, a representative from the clerk's office, and from the president's office. Each will have a representative on the grievance process review policy. So that's the only response we did get back from one of the employees that works for the Board of Aldermen. We did redact the information so it wasn't shared with the committee, but we only got one response back. And we did as much as we can with trying to engage with them. Like I said, I sent emails and I also went to the ones that were actually here to speak with them about their input, and everyone was okay with the process as it stood. And also in the drive is the process that the clerk and I that we drafted up a few years ago about the process, the grievance process, and that's also in the draft. I'm sorry, in the Google Drive.
So would the proposal be, I'm just looking at the grievance complaint process, would the proposal be then for, I guess during, like in line 5, we have the supervisor or personnel administration committee would gather all relevant information. So would the proposal be that instead of that, it's a representative from the clerk's office, a representative from personnel, and a representative from the president's office would gather relevant information and meet with the employee within 14 calendar days?
From my understanding. So
Mhm.
instead of, I guess, having the committee being the alderpersons, she's saying it'll be like a conflict of interest. So if you have one person from personnel and then a person from the clerk's office and then a person from the president's office, as far as the review committee for the grievance.
And that would be sort of in the event that, I mean, it could be that process the entire time, but I'm assuming that the conflict of interest is referred to if there is a conflict between an alderperson and a staff member.
Correct.
Okay. Do members of the committee have any questions or thoughts on that? Seeing none. I mean, that does make sense to me. To have a process that works in that way so that there is some staff representation throughout that process and not just aldermanic representation, especially if there is a conflict there. Alderman Cohn, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, how is that formed? Who are those people? How are they identified?
And I think that it would be up to probably the clerk to appoint a representative from the clerks. It would be up to the president's office to appoint a representative from the president's office, and it would be up to personnel to choose a representative from the personnel committee to sit on that grievance committee.
I mean, but you chair personnel which is your privilege as president, and then you also I would imagine, be the one from the president's office. So I guess there should be some level of specificity with respect to that, if that's the direction that we're going to go in.
Yeah, I would think that it would be a representative from the president's office, not necessarily the president.
I know, but you're the president. The president
would appoint that person, but like Director Ingracia has been, on the part of my office, has been doing most of the employee kind of management piece.
I realize that, but what I'm saying is take you out of the office, like the president, so are we saying that essentially then the president would be appointing 2 people to whatever grievance process is taking place? because the president chairs the Personnel and Administration Committee, and the president is the head of the president's office. So the president would then have 2 out of the 3 people who are on the, it doesn't really,
It could be that through a vote of the Personnel Committee, a member of the Personnel Committee is chosen to sit on it. So it's
Right.
not the president choosing that member of the Personnel Committee, but rather a collective decision. I mean, the thing that has come up several times is, what if there is a conflict between a member of the Personnel Committee and a staff member? And so, well, it might be appropriate for one member of the Personnel Committee to sit on a grievance committee. In one case, if the grievance happens to be with them, then I think there needs to be kind of a recusal from that. Director Ingracia?
Thank you, Madam President. In the current process as drafted, it does mention that anyone on the Personnel Committee who is the subject of a grievance would have to recuse themselves from participating in that process. If the committee's interested, I could take some time and try to come up with some language that we can review again if the committee's interested in having a separate process outside of simply recusal.
To me, it just seems like we've only had one employee after the clerk engaged all of them that had this concern or feedback, and the rest of them either were fine or did not provide that feedback. And we already have in the rules a stipulation that if there's something directed at a particular member of the Personnel Administration Committee, then they would need to recuse themselves. So
I will also say that people had to ask for access to the spreadsheet that I created, and at least 20 people requested access. So people did review it. Or, I'm assuming they reviewed it if they asked for access. So I don't think it was just a lack of people not responding at all.
right.
Just
Thank you.
Alderman Shane's point, I think, especially and being respectful to the individual who raised this concern and took the time to do it, appreciate it. I guess their issue is a conflict if they have a grievance with the alderperson who sit on personnel. I think Shane just literally covered that it's in the rules that alderperson could not, they would have to recuse themselves. And I think this personnel committee has already shown that we're willing to do that. When there was a situation that happened earlier this year with an alder and a staff of questions on that, and the alder was respectful and stepped away while personnel was able to talk with that staff member. So I don't think creating a new process would be necessary, to be honest. I think it's just, if it is a conflict where a staff member either has an issue with somebody on personnel, they just recuse themselves so that they're not part of that conversation.
The situation I'm kind of thinking about is, I think it could be intimidating for a staff member to come in front of a group of older people. I don't think of us as all the most intimidating people, but I also can recognize that it could be intimidating to come in front of this committee. Is there a way that we think that we could work in some kind of support, or I'm just trying to think of a way that if there's some kind of staff support. Like, for example, if we were a lot of times in places that are unionized, there is like a staff member that is kind of sits on that grievance committee or is able to provide kind of a staff perspective or staff support through that grievance process. And I could see some value in, whether it's one of the clerks or it's somebody who's chosen, from behalf of all of the staff. I could see the value in there being kind of a staff representative that could be a part of any grievance discussion. Alderman Aldridge, you are muted.
Sorry, I was talking, I was reading the document that,
Okay.
I was reading it to myself, sorry, that's,
I saw your lips moving, and so I thought you were
I
talking.
was reading the
Um, but I'm also happy to just keep it as is, if that's what the committee wants to do. We've been through it a few times. Whatever the committee's preference is, if we want to just move forward and approve it, okay, doing that as well.
I mean, I also want to respect the comment from the individual. I think I'll be fine with approving it today and then continuing to figure out what that could be. I hear you say could be intimidating talking in front of Alder, but there still would be one appointee from personnel who's an Alder on the committee. And I guess an appointment from your office, which maybe they feel staff may go back to the president and say something, who's an Alder. So I think definitely love to figure out what that can look like. But I wouldn't want to hold up the review for that and just figure out how we can continue to maybe figure that out as the process plays out, to also respect their wishes and take that into consideration.
Alderman Cone, did you have something?
Not related to that, but just in respect to the current language, did we want to keep the 20 calendar days, or did we want to, I thought you mentioned last week, Madam President, increasing that to 30 days.
Yeah, I think let's do that to 30 days.
I'll make that change.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm fine with the recommendation from Alderman Aldridge as well.
Also, are we taking that as 20 working days or 20 like Monday
Calendar.
or third day
Days.
calendar days?
Yeah.
Or 30, I'm sorry, whatever we change.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, do you have any comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
With that, then I would entertain a motion to approve the grievance. Why is this doing this? To approve the grievance process that is outlined in our documents.
I move that we adopt the grievance complaint process as outlined in the document with the modification of 30 days versus 20 calendar days.
Second, previous row.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, motion passes. With that, we can move on to the performance improvement plan. Giving me a problem getting over to that document now. Try that again. All right, performance review. All right, Director Ingracia, do you want to walk us through the updates that were made to the performance review process?
Madam President, I didn't make any updates. At the last meeting, the conversation was that the committee members would like time to review it and then provide feedback to me to make changes. So it's the same as it was when it was last presented. And as a quick reminder, if it's helpful, in column B, I just kind of put an example of what something could look like. So you had an idea about what the topics in column A actually meant.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee regarding the performance improvement plan? Alderman Cone?
Yeah, I'm not able to edit the document that we have before us, so I would just have the feedback, Director Ingracia, if you could add like maybe in caps bolded examples that like in each of those cells so that people know that that's just an example.
Yeah, I'm on the form. I'm anticipating that that would not be included at all, but maybe
I got,
like
okay.
in some instructions or something. Yeah, once I have all of the feedback incorporated, when I come back to all of you, it will be in a form like the way it will actually look for people to utilize. So you can take a look at that then. And if you'd like, I can just incorporate the examples in the instructions.
Okay. Yeah, do you want feedback in terms of what the instruction should look like as well, or are you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what, Madam President, what exactly would we be voting on today with respect to this particular item?
Well, if there still needs to be some updates and some feedback, I would say that we don't vote on it today. And if you could get to Director Ingracia, kind of your proposed language around what those instructions should look like, then how about at our next meeting, we take that vote once we see that final language.
So I'm sorry, but we don't have a form before us. This is just a sample of some of the fields and whatnot. If I'm understanding Director Ingracia correctly, this is just an example of some of the fields that would be on whatever this form is, but we don't actually have the instructions.
The form, what I'm saying is we can add instructions if you think that would be helpful. And so what's included here in column A will be on the form.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you think it would be helpful, I can also draft instructions that include sort of the examples that are in column B.
Understood. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
So why don't we push back 1 week on this one and get those instructions put together and have this in final form to approve next week, if that works for the committee.
I am fine with that.
And which I think that covers the performance review form as well. The form is what we need to update for next week. We could go ahead and approve the performance review process, which is, I don't know why my tabs keep disappearing here, which is in tab 1 that sets out the 3-week process for it, which we've spent a considerable amount of time on. And if there's no further feedback on that, we can go ahead and review approve the process and then next week approve the form. So if there's no further feedback on the performance review process, I would entertain a motion to approve the performance review process.
I move to adopt the performance review process.
Second, previous roll.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, motion passes. And so then for next week's meeting, we'll get the performance review form in final form and look to review, look to approve that. In that case, is there any further discussion on the part of committee members? If not, all members are present. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Previous roll. Aye.
No objection to previous roll. Motion passes. We are adjourned.